I would call to order the June 9th meeting of the Westmont Planning and Zoning Commission. And I will call the roll. Our secretary is not here at present. Chair Carmichael is here. Van Buren is absent. Commissioner Sharp.
Here.
Commissioner Thomas. Here. Commissioner Scales.
Here.
Commissioner Lavoy.
Here.
Commissioner Clemens.
Here.
You should mark Van Buren here, he just stepped out for a minute.
I see. Okay. We have a quorum. Would everyone please rise with me and we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the flag for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. A reminder, please, everyone, cell phones turned off. And we have one attendee that will swear in. Eleni, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony tonight? Thank you. Okay, first item is the approval of the minutes from the May 12th, 2021 regular meeting. Have people reviewed the minutes? Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve, Clemens?
Second, Scales.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion? Seeing none.
I
Yes,
have a little
please.
comment about the minutes. We're going to start really taking a look at the minutes a little bit more. I don't know if this is on. So that we can review stipulations related to any cases that were discussed, any issues that came up, to make sure that whatever requests are coming out of this body are reflected as we go forward. So in that vein, take a look at the minutes and see if your concerns are reflected, if the consensus of the group is reflected in these minutes.
So are you saying that the minutes have changed to indicate a broader discussion items and conflicts, or what has
Well,
changed?
You know, with every case, there is a motion and a motion to approve or deny, and then there may be some discussions and qualifications or conditions that we want or the group wants to place on a particular project. So the minutes should be reflective of all of that.
And the way we have traditionally done that is if you vote to recommend an item or not, let's say to vote to recommend an item, and there are special conditions you want to impose, we do that as a standalone motion. I make a motion that for this special use, they have to do a fence and this and that and the other thing, and then there's a second and a vote. So it should be clear in the minutes. I know regarding the Westmont Middle School sign request, there were discussions about conditions, but it was never formalized into a motion with a clear direction from this body in that particular case.
Uh-huh, okay.
The other way we can do it is motion to approve a special use for X, Y, and Z with the following special conditions, and then it can be part of the motion that way.
Can anybody make a motion or just?
Anyone can make a motion to that effect, and sometimes I'll help guide you through. I'll take notes from all your comments and say, here's proposed conditions or stipulations, everyone agree, and then we vote.
And so another item related to this is that, and maybe you can correct me, I think the minutes need to be approved within 30 days of the prior meeting.
No.
Okay, good. Because sometimes, you know, they're being approved 60 days into it, and if not, you know, and then they need to be publicized within 10 days after approval,
I know they have to be posted on the website,
posted on the website.
and I forget the timing requirement.
Okay, so those are things that I will be kind of like trying to make sure that we're doing it correctly, and so I just wanted to bring that up.
All right, thank you. Given that,
So do we,
for an approval, let's, we have a motion and a second and discussion, further discussion. Then, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes for approval of the minutes of the 12 May regular meeting. Open forum We have no one from the public here, so we'll close open forum. And a review of the public hearing procedures. We'll start with,
You can even skip those today if you
well,
want.
of course.
There's no public
well,
here.
There will be, I see no one from the public, so it'll be your presentation followed by the board. First and only order of business on tonight's agenda is the PZC 762021, a request from Community Development regarding the privately owned, privately owned property located at 2 through 2044 Plaza Drive in Westmont for the following. A zoning map amendment to the Village of Westmont zoning map to rezone certain split-zoned property located at 2 through 44 Plaza Drive to M, that is Manufacturing District.
Okay,
And
so.
presenting for the village planner, Johnson.
Okay,
Please.
so this is Nalini Johnson, planner for the village, and I'm presenting an item that is initiated by the village, and it affects privately owned land on North Cass. The address is 2 to 44 North Cass, and it is a property that was built back in the 80s, from what I can ascertain just going back in the records. It was built in 1980 following a plat of consolidation of 2 lots. Those 2 lots were zoned separately. One was zoned office and one was zoned manufacturing. So following the plat of consolidation, the obtained permits and the rezone to one category was not done. So basically, if we have one lot, typically it should have one zone district. If not, there could be other requirements in the code that should be built in for those situations. I think in this case, we don't really have that in the code. So we need to basically decide which way the property ought to go, if it's manufacturing or office. So in looking at it, we determined that the existing uses are office, the intention was industrial uses, light manufacturing. The future land use map shows light manufacturing or light industrial business park use as a proposed use for that area, and all properties north of there along Cass. So the recommendation that we're providing as staff is to rezone the entire lot to M. So it's a very simple item. It's basically a cleanup item for something that happened years ago, as I understand it.
It's my understanding that the owner has been contacted and has not responded to
Correct.
this at all.
Right.
Is that correct?
There's a mailing, and I think that's a requirement, so their mailings get sent out, mailed out. There's a legal notice published in the newspaper, postings. There's a sign on the property, 2 of them actually, and we haven't heard anything. We did not do any specific outreach. We felt it was a positive, rezone. It actually allows the existing businesses that are there to continue to operate without restriction. Right now, half of the property is restricted to office uses. However, you'll have distribution facilities in there or other types of things. With the M district overlay on those businesses, it actually frees them up to continue that. And additionally, the setback of the building is 25 feet. For the office, I think the requirement is 30, and for M, it's 10. So even along that area, it kind of helps them become conforming. So.
And what's the zoning of the surrounding properties?
So the properties to the north along Cass are zoned OR. The properties to the east are zoned M, and to the southeast, and there's a map here, I'll pull it up on the overhead. The southeast would be zoned M as well. So here we have the adopted zoning district map showing this. This is a current zone. This is what is currently shown on the zoning map. So if you'll see, the property is here in this box, and half of it is zoned in blue, which is OR, and the other half of the lot is zoned in M. Everything to the east is Ty Warner Park, which is zoned M as well. And then these properties down here is zoned M. This is zoned B. Now, if you look at the land use, I would not rely on the existing land use map that we have that shows existing land uses because it's not very accurate. So one of the things that as planners we want to do is go out there and verify, what the actual use of land is. And most of this land in this area is distribution, warehousing, not really manufacturing so much, more warehousing, distribution, fulfillment, things like that. So there's truck traffic and activity like that. And loading bays, that type of traffic.
If I'm a
Addition-
landlord,
Pardon me?
if I'm a landlord in a manufacturing zone district and I have a tenant who wants to be office research, am I restricted in leasing?
No, well, there is a category in the OR called office general, and that's permitted. So we don't really have a definition for office general, and being office general without a definition is pretty broad. So if I was to do some kind of testing or design work, I'm sure I could do it in that scenario. In manufacturing, obviously I could process, build, assemble, do all kinds of things. So I could even go beyond just, designing something. I could, maybe use chemicals or something. Now, there are performance standards that are applicable to the M district and the B district and the OR district, and those performance standards are always there no matter what. So, you can't have certain materials, caustic things, or whatever. There's certain ways of handling materials that are required across the board.
If you zone this to manufacturing, and if there is a general office in that building, that's a permitted use in the M district also.
Oh, okay.
So you said about so for example, if a building was emitting chemicals or something, you do restrict that?
The code provides for performance standards that allows for restricting all of those things. However, staff does not have those Geiger counters or whatever you need to go and measure things.
Okay.
However, if it came down to it and it was a really strong issue, then it's something we could, try to implement. But so far, there have been some issues in the past with sterilization and things like that. And at that point, you can hire a consultant or something like that. But right now, we don't feel like there are any issues like that or complaints. And if we do receive those, I'm pretty sure there are pretty heavy industrial uses along there as well. Historically, there've been pipe fitting and manipulating metals and things like that. So high temperature things. But those have existed over time, and there's industry standards as well that fit in, and licensing. So all of that together helps.
It seems like when these properties were consolidated and one was zoned M, the intention was to use the properties for manufacturing uses primarily. They just never rezoned that other parcel, so this is just a cleanup as far as I see it. And either zoning option would be logical given the surrounding zoning, but given the uses, it would seem that M is probably most appropriate.
And also, if you look at page 5 of the staff report, you'll see the proposed land use map that was published in or adopted in 2013. And it shows that the conversation was to increase the amount of light industrial business park type uses. And if we look at the properties north of this building, we could do an assessment and figure out whether these properties, do match up with the M district. But right now, we're limiting everything just to this particular one because of the split zone. So our GIS technician identified a lot of properties that need that cleanup type thing, and we'll be coming back with some more of these properties in the future.
But tonight's discussion is strictly with the south end of that
Right.
block, the 2 through 44.
Right. So if you look at page 7, you will see the names of the businesses in that. You could call it a business park, light industrial business park. So you have a very unified identity in terms of visuals. The building itself is very uniform. It's one building that straddles the entire lot, but it is simply bisected by the zoning quirk because it just was never officially changed back in the 80s. As well as looking at the fact that semi-trailers are not feasible. So it's not like zoning to M will suddenly see an increase in semis or something like that. just simply because the design is not permitted. You know, the turning radius and things like that, the way that, you know, the loading bays are designed. And I don't have any pictures of the rear, but the alley, it's not really an alley, it's a parking lot, is very narrow. And the property to the north is also using it, and the drive aisle is extremely narrow. So there's no way that you're gonna have, you know, semis going through there. It's mostly cars parking. And you do have some loading bays in the back, maybe a couple, I mean, maybe half of what you have in the front. So most of them are coming in through the front, because there's a lot more maneuverability along this road than in that parking lot area.
Okay, commissioners.
concludes.
Commissioner Sharp, would you like to start? Do you have a,
Sure, I have no
Comments?
comment. I think it's a great cleanup item. I'm in favor.
Matt?
I have no comments or questions. Actually, my one question was already answered, so.
Okay. Commissioner Lavoy?
No questions.
Allison?
No, it was addressed.
Well,
I see it as staff saw a problem and we're fixing it.
yeah,
I'm okay with it.
okay.
I'm okay.
Commissioner Van Buren? Well, not much discussion here. Yeah, I agree. I think I was going to lean a bit on the village attorney here, but I think his input was already crisp and complete on the way in. Just got a quick cleanup item here. Chair would entertain a motion.
So moved
Second,
approve?
Scales.
to approve.
A motion to approve.
Motion
from,
to approve.
Second, Scales.
Second?
Second, Commissioner Scales.
Okay.
And we have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Van Buren votes yes. Commissioner Sharp?
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas?
Yes.
Commissioner Scales?
Yes.
Commissioner Lavoy?
Yes.
Commissioner Clemens?
Yes?
And Chairman Carmichael.
Yes. Okay, well, thank you, Nalini.
Thank you.
We look forward to more of this, and then, of course, it'll be more extensive. This was a quick item.
Yeah.
And that's it on our agenda for the evening. Do
There
any
is one-
commissioners?
Pardon me, but there is one additional item that we would like to bring up, but maybe during the miscellaneous portion of the agenda.
I say that
The
again?
miscellaneous portion of the agenda, we'd like to bring up an item or discuss a little bit about a topic.
Okay.
Oh, are we ready?
Let's go ahead and
Okay.
do that at this time.
Well, I asked the attorney to provide us with some factors to consider when we're trying to consider rezonings. You know, how do we look at these in terms of, is it a spot zone? What's the legality of it? What is the basis for rezoning and things like that? He came up with a memo that goes over something called the LaSalle factors, which is some type of case outcome. And it's a way to think about these different things. And I'm going to turn it over to the attorney to explain a little bit.
Good. Attorney Zemanek?
Thanks, Nalini. Yeah, she asked me to put this together so you guys know if you have a, you know, like with a variance, you have certain criteria to consider. There's 3 items that fall within your findings of fact. With special uses, I think there's like 7 criteria that I circulate before a meeting that are supposed to guide your decision on the special use. With a rezoning, the state statute doesn't have any criteria for you to consider. And the Westmont zoning ordinance doesn't have any criteria for you to consider. And there's no requirement for findings of fact. So factors have evolved through case law, but they're primarily used by the courts when someone challenges through litigation to the courts whether a rezoning was proper or not. And by rezoning, I don't mean a text amendment to the text of your zoning ordinance. I'm talking about a map amendment that changes the zoning of property. And so these 8 factors have evolved through the court system and are relevant for you to consider anytime a rezoning comes before you. But because there's no findings of fact requirement, you don't have to state out loud which, if any of these apply that you think are guiding your decision. No one factor controls more than any other factor. Basically, if there's a sound basis for your decision, generally it's going to be upheld. And what happens is if someone challenges a rezoning in court, it's called a trial de novo, which means regardless of what happened at the public hearing and regardless of what happened at the village board level, both parties have to present new evidence to support or oppose the rezoning. So just, you could say on the record all you want, and that might be somewhat relevant evidence, but ultimately the judge is going to want to hear brand new evidence from the parties at the trial. But they will focus on these 8 factors. So it's more to keep in mind for yourself, and if you feel the need to tell an applicant why you don't agree with their plan to rezone, for example, let's say they want to put a rezone their property to the B2 district and it's surrounded by residential zoning, you could point to item number 1, which is the existing uses and zoning of nearby properties. Say this is incompatible with nearby zoning and uses, and you're voting against it. But you can also just vote against it without giving your reasoning. So I just wanted to lay this out for you. It may be helpful in staff reports, just like Nalini puts the standards for variances and special uses. If there's a zoning request to say, here are the 8 factors for you to consider as part of the staff report, just so you have them, and that could be repeated every time a new zoning matter comes up. But other than that, I don't have anything further on this unless you have questions. Yeah.
I have a question, John. Seemed like that the one thing that came to my mind when looking at this, even though it's administrative in nature, is taxation. Is one property, if it's zoned in one district, taxed differently than the other district? And I would think that would be one of the reasons for an objection, that I'm going to be paying higher taxes because of the change in zone.
Certainly, well, taxation is based on the use. So, and I've talked to assessors in 2 different counties about this. So regardless of whether property is zoned residential or business or manufacturing, if something is zoned manufacturing, but there's a legal non-conforming residence on the property, it's going to be zoned or taxed as a residence. Okay. It's not automatically taxed higher because of a change of zoning.
So we're not, based on a vote tonight, we're not, creating a burden to someone that's there.
Correct. And the only obligation is to publish notice in the newspaper and give notice to the property owner whose property is to be rezoned, if it's the village that's proposing the rezoning. But we also require in our ordinance, even though it's not required by state statute, we notify owners within 250 feet of the property as well.
I just thought it was peculiar that wasn't one of the ones listed in your memo.
Yeah, it's weird, but anytime a special use comes in for a new use or there's a rezoning, you're not allowed to consider things like, well, what are the tax implications for the village? Will this result in sales tax for us? That's not a valid factor. Nor is it a valid factor, what will be the tax burden on the property owner? That's not a valid factor. Nor is a valid factor what will be the effect on competition. If we were to allow this large home repair center, like a Home Depot, come in, what will that do to a local hardware store in town? That is improper to consider.
Yeah, the objections that I have seen in my work has really been related to larger subdivisions, where a subdivision is done, let's say there's 250 lots. Well, those 250 lots aren't all built right away, but the whole development is already zoned from farm to a residential district, which increases the taxes for all of those lots. So that's why you see a lot of times in the subdivision world that it gets done in phases, because the property owners, developers don't want to pay the taxes for it being zoned to a residential property opposed to farm. That's where I have seen this thing come up.
Yeah.
That would seem in conflict with the existing use, though, that you point out.
It does, but I think what happens if it's not being actively farmed and it's been subdivided into residential lots and they start putting in the public improvements, they just haven't built the house, the assessor will look at that and say, okay, it's residential now,
Right.
But all they can tax is the value of the land, because there's no improvements on it. So the taxes will still be low, just not as low as what you'd get if it's ag property.
Good point, Chris, thanks. Anything else?
I was just wondering to Nalini, you say there are several lots that probably are gonna have to have this same, do you have those identified?
Well, the one that is ready to come before you is the 500 North Cass,
Uh-huh.
which is a police station. And there was one at 311 North Cass that I was going to present, but that one is not going to be presented because we actually found the ordinance that did that correction. So 311 is R4 and it's going to stay R4. And we have other items. We have about 3 pages worth of different correction items. Not all of them are split zone properties, but these are the 3 that I, identify off the
Because
top
we
of my
could
head.
probably do them all at once.
Well, it's true. However, there is quite a bit of research that needs to come into play to make sure that it's, the case and, it takes little time. For example, 500 is not on the agenda tonight because it came about that a neighbor contacted me and said, oh, my property's zoned OR, can I zone it back to R? It was zoned OR and they want to zone it back to R3 and there was some issues with drainage and we're trying to rezone the stormwater detention. And then in speaking with the village manager, it involves a lot more issues with other lots. So we just tabled it. However, if we come back just with a straight rezone of one property that's split zoned, we'll be fine. And then we can work those issues in. So next month, we'll be looking just at that piece. So.
Thank you, Attorney Zemanek, for this memo. That these will be valuable factors to use as a checklist in the future. Do we have any other planning topics to discuss? General updates?
Was the item that you had suggested earlier might be on, at the Oak Brook Hills property, is that still in the works or?
The Oak Brook Hills property would be your Willow Crest type property, 3500 Midwest Road. That one is under review by the county for wetlands and also land use and opinion related to geological and things like that. So once they come back with their buildable area based on taking out these critical areas, then we'll come back and talk to them about density. So
Okay.
they're still working hard.
Okay. Anyone else have anything? I would want to give a plug for Westmont. The street fair, the Thursday night street fairs are on, and I guess last week's was highly successful, so that's encouraging and exciting. And the 4th of July fireworks are on at Ty Warner Park, as is the Taste of Westmont on the 8th through the 11th of July, so go Westmont. And that said, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move. Thomas.
Second Clemens?
Second Clemens. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This meeting is adjourned.